I'm going to say that there's 4 buckets that we as business owners should be focusing our time on a regular basis. And it's going to be the buckets or areas of the business that will actually move the needle and grow it. So first is marketing and visibility. So how you let the world know what it is you do. 2 is sales. 3 is servicing your clients or product development. And then number 4 is leadership.
Ooh.
Leading your team, because you're not meant to be in those other 3 buckets all yourself by yourself through this whole journey of entrepreneurship. And this 4th bucket actually came up after doing the work, showing up. And I was like, oh, this framework's missing a bucket. So this bucket that I'm sharing with you actually had 3 and now has 4.
Hey guys, welcome to episode number 257 of the Game On Girlfriend podcast. Today we're talking about all things productivity, specifically for business owners. If you've ever had that moment where you feel like you ran around all day, but you're not sure what you got done, or worse, you're on social media scrolling, feeling productive, but you're not actually producing anything, this is the episode for you. Listen, running a business is very attention draining, right? There's so many things that need your attention on a daily basis. How do you know what you're supposed to be focusing on? How do you know which tasks are actually going to move the needle? Well, in today's episode with our guest productivity specialist, Amber de la Garza, you're going to find out. What I love about this conversation with Amber is she really dives into the 4 buckets that every entrepreneur needs to be paying attention to. And she's been adding to this list. This isn't something she threw out once and then didn't experiment with and grow and expand with. You guys, she walks the talk. She eats her own dog food, as I like to say. And she is the person you want to listen to when you're trying to figure out how you can best spend your time in your business. Amber de la Garza is the productivity specialist with more than a decade of experience helping small business owners maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most by improving their time management and elevating their productivity. Amber is a sought-after coach, trainer, speaker, writer, host of the Small Business Straight Talk podcast, and the creator of the Leverage Lab. Amber shares her message on her weekly podcast and as straight talk, both virtually and in person across the country for audiences that range from small business owners and associations to multinational corporations. If you've been struggling to feel productive, if you are nervous that if you're not organized, you can't be productive. If you are nervous, you're so organized, you can't find anything. You know what I'm saying? Right? This is the podcast episode for you. I want you to grab a journal. I want you taking notes and I want you listening to how you can increase your productivity in your business. Pop in those earphones and let's get to it. Amber, welcome to the Game On Girlfriend podcast. Oh, let's dive into all things productivity, shall we?
Yes, I'm so excited. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So productivity is like one of my favorite topics. Because I think we
Awesome.
have God, have we just been, I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about the white patriarchy for a second, but have we not been shoved into like the hustle, 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 hustle world of all time?
Yes. And I'm
Like,
actually on the other side of that message. Yeah, I am not about that hustle, hustle, burn the night oil, like all of those sayings, they're not useful.
oh my goodness. I mean, I just remember when I started my business, just to open the kimono a tiny bit here, but when I started my business, I remember feeling bad if I missed 5 minutes of like productive work.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I look back on that. I'm like, oh, poor old Sarah, young Sarah, past Sarah. That's what we say.
There you
All
go.
right. I'm like, I don't know. Is she old? Is she young? I don't know. Anyway, listen, Amber, before we jump in and we talk about all these things, productivity, we talk about how we are not in the hustle culture anymore. Thank all the good things. But I have to know from you, of
Yeah.
all the things on planet Earth that Amber could have chosen to do, why is this what you do?
Yeah. I mean, with any good origin story, it kind of goes way back and connects a lot of dots because when you're in it, it's not that obvious. But once you've gone through that journey, you're like, oh my gosh, it was always there along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, way back when my vision was to be in real estate. From high school, I interned. I went to college and got a degree in real estate and business management. So I pursued a career in real estate, specifically in sales, and I hated selling. I hated it. I was young. I had this vision of what life would look like as,
Yeah.
a real estate agent. And I did it for a few years, but what I was gravitated towards was the business side of real estate, the operations side.
Ah,
So I, shifted, I pivoted after, 7, 8 years, on this journey in real estate. And I decide, okay, I'll stay in the industry, but I'm going to gravitate towards what I feel like I'm called to do, which is the organization, the business systems, the processes. So I asked for a meeting with the owner of the brokerage. And I was young. I was in my early 20s. And I said, look, I've gone to college. I made this big mistake. I'm licensed. I don't want to sell, but I've been with your company for a really long time. And so they created a spot for me. And I said I would start anywhere and work my way up. And he took those words literally. I was like second over a receptionist. Yeah, I was
Got
like
it. Yeah.
breaking the receptionist, right? So,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
it was one of those things you just had to follow your heart and just
Yeah.
hope that with, hard work and, showing up, you'd figure it out. Well,
Right.
soon thereafter, I ended up getting a mentor in the company that pulled me in under her wings. And I moved quickly through different positions. And then I was trained to be a coach. And now I was coaching the top sales executives at this company around business systems and leveraging through team building. And I loved it. I loved the training. I loved the opportunity. And then, 2008 happened and the market, kind of crashed
I
in
heard
real
about that.
estate.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
the department was closed down, but I stayed with the company and I shifted and did other positions. I became the brokerage manager, which was in charge of compliance and operations and stuff. And I just say that because, again, wasn't where I wanted to be, but I did shift into another place that used my skills. Well, in 2010, I got pregnant. And at this time, I was like, I am climbing the corporate ladder. It's worked thus far. I've got this plan, and got pregnant, took my maternity and vacation. And 3 weeks before I went back, I was like, oh, that is not what I want. I am not going back.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, like how
Yeah.
much had this just changed everything that I thought I wanted?
Everything.
Everything. And it was like in a moment. So my husband and I talked and we decided I'd stay home for the first 2 years. So I went
Okay.
in and I resigned and I met with the COO and he just listened to me. And then I remember I was so nervous and I was upset and I'm like, are you doing the right thing? And he leaned over and said, good for you for choosing family over business. Do you want to stay on as a consultant? And I'm like, what? Hold on.
You're like, is that
Well,
a
no, I
thing?
came here to quit.
Yeah.
Like, let me go talk to my husband. He's
Wow.
like, you can do night times, you can do weekends. But what that did was open up the door of being a contractor, working my
Mm.
own hours. No longer was there corporate politics, and I didn't have to do anything I didn't love doing or I wasn't uniquely skilled at because they only wanted to bring me back for certain projects and things that I was skilled at. I was like, this is the life. Like, this is amazing.
I
And I
get
really
that.
only got a little piece of that and the door to be opened that someone believed in my skill set to hire me specifically for that. And so I ended up getting incorporated by the time my son was 2 months old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay. Two
and
months.
like 2 months old. But I had already made a commitment. So this is all about goal setting, right? I had already made a
Yeah.
commitment. I was going to stay at home for the first 2 years till my son could go to preschool. So I've devoured everything about business, about productivity, about time management. I took those 2 years to be really present with my son as intended, but really building myself, my expertise, and my confidence on the back end. And so I launched my business on my son's second birthday.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So
Oh,
it's not as like clear cut, right? 2 years is a long time, but I launched it and there has been pivots along the way. When
mhm.
I first started, I wasn't specifically doing productivity. In fact, there's a funny story there when you ask why. So I first started out as an organizational consultant, thinking every business needs organization and business systems. That
Mm,
was my experience. Well, that's great, but that's seen as a luxury in businesses.
interesting. Okay.
So this is a good message in marketing. So I changed my name or my title to efficiency consultant, but provided the same services. And that was it. The doors were knocking down. People didn't see efficiency as a luxury. They saw it as a necessity in the business, but it was just a name change. It was the same offering.
Isn't that
And
amazing?
isn't
Oh,
that
I love
crazy?
that
Yeah.
story. Yeah.
Yeah. And, what really seeded this was when I was coaching highly successful people, and we had great systems and processes, but they would come back to coaching sessions and not have done homework and not had been able to take action. And the
Mhm.
running theme was, I don't have time to work on my business. I'm so overwhelmed and all of those various things. And I just thought, wow, if they can unlock that skill set, Wouldn't that be incredible if they could go after any goal they set their minds to, because that's no longer an excuse or a reason? So after about 2 years, I actually shifted to productivity because I wanted to focus on the actual behavior and the skill set of managing themselves and managing time and managing others. And that's been 10 years now. So for 10 years, it's been productivity specialist.
That is so cool. What a great story. I
Yeah.
mean, I love, like you said, there's like the thread through all of it of like it kind of kept coming back to
Yeah.
productivity, but even though you weren't calling it that yet or not seeing it quite that way. But I also love, Amber, your commitment to you and to feeling through things, right? That I don't think we talk enough about the
Yeah.
motherhood flip that happens. Cause I was corporate all the way. I was taking
Yeah.
charge. I was already a VP, like get out of the way, CEO, here I come.
Yeah.
And it's shocking, right? Because if you had told me I'd want to stay home, I was like, you're high. I will never want
I
to
would
stay
have
home,
done the
right? Like,
same thing. I
nah,
would have been like, why are
yeah.
you putting that on me? That is not me.
Nope, not happening, baby. I'll be back in 20 minutes. Like, let me get this
Yeah.
kid out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. And it does hit everybody differently. The problem is you just don't know how it's going to hit you till it hits you, right? And
Right.
that is, I wish people talked about that more because you just cannot predict. You think you know, and you might be right,
Yeah.
but you might also not be right. So
I,
giving yourself that freedom. So I love that you went in and actually did that. And I love that you're open to the idea that we can change. Like you said, you pivoted in the business and then you listened to what your potential clients actually thought was valuable. I
yeah.
thought that was so important. And I think that is a mistake that so many business owners make is they're like, no, 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 but my idea is great.
Right. And I have so much time invested in the logo and the marketing and the this and that. But I think if we don't listen and shift, we're actually causing more harm. And that has been a lesson to learn over and over again. And now I just expect it. It usually never happens exactly as you planned,
Right.
and usually better. So yeah.
And that is so true. It's usually better.
Hmm.
I love
Yeah.
this. Well, while we're talking about this, let's just take a step back for a hot second and be sort of more open, go, okay, Amber, we're talking
Yeah.
about productivity as you view it, right? Like your
Yeah.
experience through all this, having people understand like the power of efficiency. We know the word, we know we need to be more efficient. It costs us money when we're not, all the things. But
Yeah.
for you, what is your definition of productivity as you like to explain it, teach it, and move through it?
Absolutely. There are so many definitions. So for our listeners, I'm going to just share my definition. And if you like it, it's my gift. You can take it with you because we have so many definitions that
Yeah.
weigh us down and feel heavy. But my definition of productivity is simply when we're investing our best time into our best activities. And it's purposely a framework because what my best activities are going to be different because my goals are different than yours, Sarah, and your business is in a different
Mm.
place than my business. And it really takes understanding what are your highest value activities, what actually will move the needle forward in your business. And when I refer to best time, we're talking about that like focused, like that uninterrupted, craved time that we want to dive deep into the work. We want that and we want more of that. And
Mm.
simply said, we want to show up our best and do our best work. Right.
Ah, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'll take
Okay,
it.
good.
I'm snagging the definition. I'm totally down. I
And
love
I,
that.
I just want to follow that up to say that I also believe we are not meant to be productive all day, every day.
Thank you. Thank you for saying
And
that.
like not even 8 hours, not even 6 hours. And the reason is because if you think you're going to truly be productive all day, every day, then you're diluting your high value activities
Mm,
because we know it's true. There's a lot of stuff we have to do in our businesses that do have to get done and that probably need to be done by you, but they're not going to be the ones that move the needle. And so, if we can really define and protect those activities so those don't get squeezed out by lying to ourselves to say, well, I was busy all day, I was productive all day. All tasks are not created equal, all activities are not created equal. And so, even if you are thinking, oh my gosh, once I go over, like, what are what tend to be your high value activities or areas of activities as a business owner, is where can you start to say 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, or two
mm.
hours, 3 days a week, like whatever your cadence is, and then build from there. But the goal is never going to be to get to a full work day because they're simply easily able to squeeze out that really important work.
That's so true. That is so true. And I think the other thing that we have confused on productivity,
Mhm.
when you said that, like not all activity and tasks are created equal. One of the things I see really happening for entrepreneurs now, given social media, is the social media suck. And by
Yeah.
that, I mean, it feels like you're doing something when you're scrolling.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like that's like a
exactly.
sneaky non-productivity one, right? Like when the
Yeah.
second you said that, I was like, oh, that's a task. People think it's a task. It's not a task.
Yeah, I
And
mean, even email, when we're avoiding real work, like
yes.
deep, like thoughtful work, being in our email and triaging the inbox feels like, okay, I showed up, I did the
Yeah.
thing. And yes, the emails need to get answered, but again, not at the expense of those high value activities.
Reach on it, sister. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it
And
so much.
I just want to like say one more thing too, maybe a couple more things about this is that before we jump into like what what are some of those high value activities, is that productivity is not the same as organization or being organized. And I think that a
Ooh.
lot of people feel like, oh, that's somebody else, like that they're born that way to be productive, or they're more
Mm.
organized so they can be more productive. And I just want to like lay this scenario out and see if this feels true. Have you ever met somebody that has a color-coded calendar, perfectly clean desk, and not reaching their goals?
Yes.
Yeah. And have you met
100%.
somebody that looks like they're practically buried behind piles of paper, but they can get into some deep work and do amazing things and slay their goals?
That's me.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, there you go.
I'm
I
like,
didn't
don't tell
expect.
anybody. What you can't see on the camera is the 85 cups of water and the 14 books that are open and all the notes. Like that's how
Yeah,
my brain works. But we had 2.5 hours of productive writing this morning, right? It's like, I
yeah,
think that's so true. And I am so happy you said that because it gives people permission to be productive on their own terms, which is again taking it out of that hustle pounding. I feel like so many of us were taught for so long because you got to do it this way. You got
yeah,
to do it like that. Forgive me, like the white guy on the stage said, and then you have to do it how
yeah,
that one said it. And now it's like, wait a second, that doesn't work for everybody. It's sort of like corporate, right?
yeah,
That's great. But when life changes, it doesn't work for everybody. And it was so great for you to get that consultation note from your boss. And it's so great for somebody who thinks that because they're not organized or color coded or uses 15 different gel pens that they're never going to make it. None
yeah.
of that is real. I think
No,
that's
it's
so important.
and we want to honor both sides. Like for
Right.
me, okay, so for me, I do need a cleaned off desk to really focus, right? And, I break a lot of the traditional s- tips or strategies that people are saying should be. And you're not
Mm.
going to hear me say somebody should be this way. I'm going to give you strategies that fundamentally work, but how do you customize them to work for you?
Ah,
So, a couple of things. Like I say I'm like a car that needs warming up. I'm not going to like just show up in my office and go into my deepest work. I'm going to clear the inbox, touch base with my team, make sure my clients don't need anything. I block that time out, and then I go into my deepest work. I can't do that deep work with clutter in my head, like, oh, my team needs something. Oh, maybe a client reached out. So I build a schedule around how I know how I show up best. Other people are like, what? If I started my email, I'd be there all day. Like they don't have that boundary. And so that would not work for them.
mhm.
Another example is when I left corporate, I was at the same desk. Like I've been here for 14 years. So
I love
I'm
it.
sitting right here and I'm looking out and there's a tree outside my window. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so productive because my office before I was a manager, the door was open, there's cubicles, there's hustle and bustle of corporate. And I thought it's going to be so quiet. It's going to be amazing. Then I found myself cussing and cursing at the bird that landed on the tree that was distracting me, right? Like, why is the bird distracting me? And then
Right.
the mailman goes by and then someone's walking their dog. And I'm like, like distracted. I was like, what is going on? My
Yeah.
house is completely silent.
I love it.
And so I was like, this is interesting. Well, let's see what happens if I go to a coffee shop.
Mhm.
So I actually built my business. Anytime I wasn't with a client, I built my business for the first 2 years sitting in a loud, busy coffee shop.
Mhm.
Now, this was 10, let's see, this was like 12, 14 years ago. Now you can get soundtracks that mimic this because they know
It
they've
helps.
proven scientifically that that white noise allows people to focus.
I
But
love
for
it.
me, I was like, well, what would happen if I just didn't judge it? Like, what would happen
Mm.
if I just was trying to build this business and I can't because the bird's landing on the tree? And that's really sat with me because every person has something that either
Yes.
works for them or doesn't, but they're afraid to explore and experiment with it because they think it should look a certain way.
Oh my gosh, I love this so much. And just to reiterate the fact of what you just said, like we all have to tailor to what works for us,
Yeah.
is I'm the exact opposite of you. I get up at 6 and I'm in this office for 2 hours in my
Mhm.
pajamas and barely a cup of coffee, and I talk to no one, and I get so much done. Isn't that
Yeah.
wild? Like, that's
Yeah.
just another example, but for each of us, I think what I love about what you're saying, Amber, is it gives everybody sort of permission
Yeah.
to figure out what's gonna actually work for them. And I think, to try to dictate that or conform that, it just makes people feel bad, which is the
Really
opposite
bad.
to productivity, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
then you get the whole layer of mindset, which we haven't even touched on. But I mean, when you're shooting yourself and you're not showing up the way you think someone else is, like that's not the mindset that's going to help. And
Right.
so, just to bring that whole conversation full circle, is when you're investing your best time, that's you showing up your best. So, what is that? And it's your
Mm,
job to find out what that is and then purposely create that environment,
mm.
purposely create that time in your schedule for you to show up your best and then to be focused on those high value activities.
Ah, I love it. I love it. So let's talk about this.
Yeah.
So now we've given people permission. We're like, yo, people, figure out your things, figure out
Yeah.
where you are the most productive, how you're the most productive, white noise, silence, morning, afternoon, whatever, fill in all the
Yeah.
blanks, right? So you work on you.
Mhm.
What the heck are the high value activities? Like, what do we do in that time? We figured it out. We got the time. What is the best way for us to spend
R
our time?
Yeah, so I have a framework, I call them buckets, other people might call them departments of the business, but I'm gonna say that there's 4 buckets that we as business owners should be focusing our time on a regular basis. And it's going to be the buckets or areas of the business that will actually move the needle and grow it. Whatever our businesses need to be profitable, to be healthy, to be able to provide for our families, to be able to provide for the families of the people that work with us. So, we're going to start off with bucket number 1. And I call them buckets because I did this presentation on a stage one time and I actually used buckets and used it as like overflowing water, right? So
I
you got to
love
show up in
it.
the first one and let it overflow to get the second, third, and fourth. So that's the visual. And the first bucket is marketing and visibility, letting the world know what it is you do and how you can help them.
I'm so excited. Yes.
Yeah, and it's the first bucket because if you don't do that, you can't get to sales and you can't get to servicing the clients and, you know, most of my clients are service-based business owners. And so, there's this yo-yo, right? Of like
Mm,
I'm marketing, I'm doing visibility or maybe sales, and then now I've head deep into servicing the client. And the truth is we need to find our own balance to keep that pipeline going. And if we consider marketing and visibility activities as high value, they get a place on our schedule and we show up consistently for them.
I
Now,
love
the
it.
strategies are going to be different for every business,
Mm,
every personality. Like I started out blogging. I don't know what I was thinking. I hate writing. I love talking. Then I switched to podcasting and it was amazing how consistent and, how great that strategy has worked for my
yeah.
business.
Yeah.
But you got to figure that out. And to say that marketing visibility, there's a lot that happens in marketing and visibility in my company. And as my business has grown, I show up differently in that bucket, but I
Mm,
still show up. So there's other people on my team filling that bucket as well. And so just permission to say, you don't own the bucket. You might just be supervising the bucket, or you might be the person on the front end and you have a team behind you. But this is an important place.
yep.
So when you show up in that bucket, then you get to have sales conversations with this bucket number 2, right? Face to face, asking for the business. What are you doing to say, will you work with me? How can I help you? Not just have coffee and think they know
Right.
what how you can help them, like specifically asking, for the business. And this looks different for everybody. Sometimes it's consultations or discovery calls, or sometimes it is coffee or lunch, but you're asking for the business.
Got it. Yeah.
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 And unfortunately, it's the lifeblood of the business, but I think you would agree that you see that being squeezed out quite a bit of
Yes.
sales activities getting squeezed out at the expense of maybe other productive activities, but it's not evenly distributed with time and energy and
Mm.
attention.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love what you were just saying too. It's relationship building too. It's not just let me write a sales page, right? Or let me go for the hard email sell. Like it's
Yeah.
really understanding how to continue to nurture and expand and connect with other people. And I think you're right. I think that takes more time.
Yeah.
Especially the entrepreneur porn we see on social media, right? Of like, you'll make $20 million in 3 minutes, right? Like they don't
Yeah.
talk about that piece of it, right? That doesn't
Yeah.
exist. That's not real, by the way. Anyone.
They're not talking about the hundreds of emails that have been written to serve your audience and to give value and to,
Right.
show up and really listen to what your ideal client needs. And are you aligning your offerings with those? Like there's a lot of things that fall under the sales activities. Yeah.
100%. And the crossover in marketing too, like even what you did too, when you change it from organization to efficiency in your own
Yeah.
business and watch the sales come in,
Yeah.
that takes time, right? And so
Yeah.
you're saying not only is it the marketing bucket, but that like that sales bucket, that relationship building bucket, the exposure of your business to other
Yeah.
businesses, to affiliates, to clients, to potential customers, all of those things, and that actually creating time and energy to
Yeah.
do those activities. Okay.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, first thing
For
in my
me, like one of the strategies I used, it was marketing and visibility could be arguably that, but it was also, I believe, sales. Like I started my
Mhm.
business speaking at every luncheon locally. Like I started as a local business first before I went national or international. And it was about the meet and greets after the luncheon and making the connections and serving the audience. And that strategy worked for a long time until I was fortunate enough to now build a podcast. As you know, like, okay, that's easier than going and driving all over town. We were just talking, it hit 120 in Vegas the other day here. So instead of driving all over town doing luncheons, but it is a way of connecting and serving to build that relationship to then get the opportunity, because that's all you're doing is getting the opportunity to ask, how can I help you? How can we work together?
Mhm. Yeah, I love it. And it is true. And you've got to ask. I think that's a really important, valuable task you're putting into this bucket as well. Is like we've got to actually make the ask and we've got to
Well,
let people
since
know we
we're
have a
opening,
business.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, since we're opening all the can of worms, yeah, I owned a podcast for quite a while without actually asking for the business on each episode.
Good times. Good times. We've all
You
done
know,
it. It's
it was
okay.
all about
Yeah.
service, service, service. And I'm pretty sure I listened to that on a podcast or a blog or something, like just to provide service. And then, it just dawned on me, like, I've done a lot of work to build this audience. Like, obviously I should be making the offer. I should let them know I want to help them and work with them.
Yes.
And I just say that not jokingly, but like, look, we don't know until we know. And, what you see in my business now is not what it looked like, 5, 10, 12 years ago. So we've all had to figure this stuff out along the way.
Yeah, and that takes time too, right?
Yeah.
I really love that. We actually I wanna say it was episode number 263. If I have that right, I'm gonna be really proud. But we had someone on who's a marketing expert talking about how often you have to make mistakes in order
Mm,
to figure it out, and I so appreciate that and what you're sharing too inside of productivity,
yeah.
right? Where it's like in order to be really productive in marketing and sales, you've gotta put in the time to
Yeah.
figure out what's gonna work, and by the way, what isn't going to work because that's just as important in marketing and
It
sales.
is. And that was a huge mind shift for me. And I remember the exact time where I had the shift where I framed it all as an experiment. Because there was a time where I was attached to the marketing effort and the sales activity and the funnel and the launch and all the things. And it was, not fun, not joyful, burning me out. And I was like, look, like the business needs this, but this does not feel great at all. And it
Right.
was all, I didn't change much. I changed my mindset around it. And I was no longer attached to the outcome. It didn't mean I didn't show up. It didn't mean I did something wrong. I could only control me. And I literally framed it. This is an experiment. Let's see what happens. And that felt a lot more fun to
Yeah.
say and experience. And so I actually feel that way a lot about my business in a lot of different arenas as I just frame it up. Let's see what happens.
Oh, I love it because it just takes all the pressure off.
It does. It
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, "Let's go play." "Oh, okay. Well, I'm up for that." Yeah.
Exactly.
It's so good. Okay.
And, just to say, like, I got there after I realized, like, a lot of stuff didn't work out and none of it burnt the business down, right? Like, that was the underlying fear is like, "Oh, I made a
Mm.
mistake. I put all this time and energy and something didn't work. Like, the business is gonna burn down." And I was like, "Okay, well, that didn't happen. It didn't feel good to be coming from that place." So I just shifted. I was like, "It's an experiment, and if it fails, the business is strong enough. Like, I've put in the time and the foundation, and that's really what I had." And that couldn't have happened day 1. I had
Right.
to prove, like, the business wasn't gonna burn down with a mistake over time to get to that
Oh.
point.
Well, it's also I also wanna acknowledge, I think you may have jumped above another mindset that I think some people have problems with, which is if a marketing attempt or a sales attempt fails, correct?
Yeah.
I say that in quotes, right? Doesn't go the way you expected, that it means what you're offering is terrible too. And it sounds like you jumped right. You were like able to see through that in 2 seconds. You're like, nope, what I'm offering is freaking fantastic. And the business is strong enough to go through it. So I just want to acknowledge that because I know for a lot of people,
Yes.
the initial mindset shift is what I'm offering is awesome.
Yeah.
I just haven't figured out how to talk about it yet. And that is a huge shift. And then to
It
go from
is a
that
shift.
to, yeah, to like
That's
the business can
incredible that you
handle it.
noticed that. And to say that she, Sarah, you saw right through that. Like behind the scenes, I'd be like, I just don't understand. My clients are getting great results. Why isn't this marketing working? Like it wasn't that I thought it wasn't working. I was like so frustrated. I'm like, no, like I need to be helping more people in the world.
Yes.
And that became the energy. But it was only because I did show up and I did fine tune my craft of coaching and getting results.
Mm,
And the disconnect was definitely like, well, truthfully, a lot of this is not fair. Like, why can't this marketing work? Why can't more people
so
hear?
honest.
And I just had to just transition out of that because it was weighing me down and quite frankly, not allowing me to show up my best. That's not productive.
I love it.
And it's
I
all
love
around
it.
mindset. Yeah.
Oh, I know
Yeah.
mindset plays such a huge role as all of us coaches tell people all the time, right? It's your head.
Yes.
All right. So we got marketing, we've got sales.
Yes, we got to go. Yes.
What
Okay,
else?
we have marketing sales. Thanks for keeping me on track. And then number three is servicing the client or providing the thing, the widget, the thing that you're selling, right?
Okay.
So my clients tend to be mostly service-based business owners where it's like their skill set is the thing that's being sold,
Mm,
various industries. And even with a product, you can get, overwhelmed with fine-tuning the product and doing version after version after version, right?
yes.
And well, with service based business owners, serving the client is a really comfortable place because it aligns with your expertise.
Mm,
And you got into business, you had the skill set, and this is high value, it's closest to the dollar. But my warning with this bucket is this bucket will be the one that sabotages all else because you could have your head down, servicing the client, and then not showing up consistently in marketing visibility or sales or this fourth bucket. And so again, this is about finding the right balance for you and finding for your business rather, right? The right balance for how you could show up with your business and making sure that all your time isn't working in the business and that you're creating time to work on the business.
100%. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Okay. So, well, I can get this, right? If you're not actually consistently honing what you're selling,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a physical product, right? Like we see this from huge companies all the time,
Yeah.
right? They're new formula, new this, new that, right? Like all the time. And I think, this is something I love to do. So I'm a little bit of like a learning junkie. Is that the right word? I don't think that's the right word, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I love to learn and grow and
Yeah.
expand and learn how to coach better and learn more about this industry.
I
But
do.
I know for some people, like it's so easy, isn't it, to kind of rest on your laurels and like just get in this, like, dude, I'm really good at this. I'm good. Like I'm
Yeah.
studying. It's so easy to do that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other extreme, right? Of not
Yeah.
showing up and fine tuning it. Yeah. And for me personally, I am only as good of a coach as I am pouring into myself and growing myself. And so I really take the personal development and professional development serious.
Mm,
But again, there's balance to everything. Like I have friends that will remain nameless that go to every conference and read every book and buy every course, and they're stuck in the learning.
yes.
And there's something to be said about like on the job training, right?
Yes.
Not that we're practicing on our clients, but like getting the hours in of experience. And so when I'm with a client, I'm like, how do I do this the best I can? What did I learn from this conversation with a client?
Mhm.
So there's that kind of learning and growing. And then there's obviously the books and the conferences and all of that stuff as well. But you
Which
got to do it. That was my point. You got to do it.
I'm so glad you say that because I always say action is the best teacher, and people are always like, Sarah, how do you just flip on a camera and start talking? I'm like, I've been doing this for 15 years. But
Yeah.
it's like, who do you think does a better job, right? The person who researches a camera for 6 months and then adjusts the lighting and then goes back, oh no, that camera's out of date. And then they do the thing. And
Yeah.
it's like, or the person who just turns on their phone and starts practicing, right? So I
Yep.
totally hear you. Like there's crafting the skill. And
Yeah.
then there's action-based learning, and I think that's so critical. I love that you
Yeah.
differentiated appreciated that because it is important for us to remember you can get so stuck. I always joke with my clients. I'm like, did you just redo your about page again? And they're like, how did you know? And I'm like, I know. Right? 'Cause it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
they do. And we're scared
I
to like
know.
watch. Yeah.
I started podcasting in 2017 and I still hear from people that are like, "Oh, I just found you and I went back to the earliest episodes." I'm like, "No, no, no, don't
Please
do
don't do
that.
that.
Don't do
Yeah.
that. It's not even the same." Like, okay, just work your way backwards from current. I
Yeah.
remember we were doing like a roundup one time and I had to listen to old episodes and I was listening to one of them and I almost fell off my chair laughing at myself. I was
Oh,
like, "Oh, so that's what version 1.0 looked like. I'm so
man.
glad I stuck with it."
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah, I had actually a client I'm working with now one-on-one was like, "Hey, I just listened to episode 9." I was like, "Oh, dude." I was like, "Oh
Exactly.
my goodness." Right, but that is the great thing too for us, I think, is you can go
Yeah.
back and actually see how far you've come, and that's for anybody who's nervous to get started or scared to get started small or all those
Yeah.
things that keep us in the learning phase, right?
Yeah.
Is that gap between where you start and where you end up is just it's so cool to be able to see that sometimes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So wait, Amber, I want to make sure. What are the 4 buckets? Go through them for us one more
Yep.
time so anybody listening can round up. What are the 4 buckets I need to
Yep.
be spending my time on when I'm being productive?
So first is marketing and visibility. So how you let the world know what it is you do. 2 is sales. 3 is servicing your clients or product development. And then number 4 is leadership.
Ooh.
L- Leading your team because you're not meant to be in those other 3 buckets all yourself by yourself through this whole journey of entrepreneurship. And this 4th bucket actually came up after doing the work, showing up, and I was like, "Oh, this framework's missing a bucket." So this bucket that I'm sharing with you actually had 3 and now has 4. And the reason is because I mean, naively made the assumption that my clients understood leading their team was incredibly important.
Mm,
But what I would hear are these undertones of like, if I have to train one more time, oh my gosh, if I have to slow down and delegate, oh my gosh, do I really have to have another meeting with these people? Why do they
mhm,
need to talk to me all the time? Some
mhm.
version of that, right?
Yes.
And I'm like,
Yes.
hold on, are you kidding me? Where else can you invest time and actually get a multiple? Like
Mm,
literally a multiple of your time than investing in other people. So obviously it should be one of your highest value activities is showing up to lead your team, to delegate, to have the meetings, to clearly communicate, to hire, to fire, to discipline. The bucket, there's a lot of things in this bucket, but they're incredibly important to growing a healthy business, whatever that looks like for you.
mm. Oh, that makes me so happy. It is true. I look back for clients and for myself, like
Yeah.
where things really explode. Right? And every
Mhm.
single time it's when something gets delegated to someone who loves doing that one thing.
Yeah,
And
or
yeah,
they're uniquely talented at it too, right? You're like, "I
that's the
thought I
thing.
was good at it." Then you give it to somebody else, you're like, "Why did I ever touch that?" I've done that before myself.
That was not my expertise. Speaking of
Yeah,
podcasts, right? Like I always wanted to be able to like, jump in if there was an emergency and somebody couldn't edit. And I think I edited the first 10 episodes. Heaven help me. And then the second I let that go to someone who that's all
yeah,
she does, and I love her so much and she's so great at, I was like, what is wrong with me? I did
yeah,
that to myself for 10 weeks, right? Like,
yeah,
I totally agree with you. And it's so wonderful, I think, to be able to take our business's money and push it out to the people that really want to be playing with us and want to be supporting what we're doing and growing the business in a totally different way. And every single time, it's when somebody's business starts to pop.
yeah, I agree. So my team is full of part-time moms that are juggling drop-offs and pickups and
Yep.
soccer and football, and I'm doing the same thing in my household, but we're running this amazing business, and I have so much gratitude that I could provide these job opportunities for these expertise with flexibility where a lot of people didn't even think that would be an option of like, oh, I can work between, 10 and 2 and still be this full-time mom. And to me, it brings such joy and pride, and that I can build a team and that my business does provide in that way.
Yes, it's gorgeous. Gosh, what a full circle moment for you too, from the moment your boss said, "Hey, do you want to be a consultant?" that you're able to open that door for so many others
Yeah.
by doing
Yeah.
what you love the most. Oh my gosh, Amber, this has just been so fun. I have absolutely loved getting to spend this time with you. And I know there's probably business owners listening who are like, "Okay, but how can productivity really get my business to the next level?" I believe you have something for those people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a free quiz. It's a 3-minute quiz. It's called Take Your Business to the Next Level. Right. So, like, what's holding you back from getting it to the next level? And you can get that at amberdelagarza.com/quiz. And you'll find out what's most holding you back. And then you'll get a curated playlist. So you don't need to go back to my early episodes. You get the best of the best that are only about that specific challenge you're having, because I feel like it's important that we're not just consuming information, but that we're targeted with what we need to be focusing on to get it to the next level. So, all
I
that to
love
say,
it.
take the quiz at amberdelagarza.com/quiz.
I love it. You guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, that link will be underneath this video. If you are listening in, it will be in the show notes. Oh my gosh, Amber, if someone's like, I need me some more Amber, where do you like to hang out online? Where can people find you?
Well, you can find me over at amberdelagarza.com, but regarding social media, I like Instagram, and it's amber_delagarza.
Awesome. All right, you guys,
Yeah.
we'll have that link for you as well. Amber, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I so appreciate you.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much for this conversation.